my name is James Jarnigan, and I'm here to talk about my trip and experience that I've taken to China. I found out about TENSIS through one of the representatives from China Now, the program that TENSIS works with. He came to one of our engineering classes and gave a speech about the TENSIS program, the China Now program, and what generally you can learn from China itself. Before that, I had heard about it through the pamphlets and everything, but it didn't really seem like anything I'd get into. It didn't have it just didn't seem to have the classes I wanted. They were all core classes. They had the video production courses, which I was greatly interested in, and I never knew that they actually had that program until one of their representative, Mr. D.K. Wu, came and gave a nice speech about it during class. It was very enlightening, very informative too. I decided to go just because the opportunity came. I'd never thought I'd ever do something like travel across the country for school. I wanted to enroll to the VPT classes, but unfortunately, due to a lack of enrollment to it, the class got dropped. The people with TENSIS, they really wanted me to stay into the program, and they actually offered me to go onto, instead of the VPT, the video production courses, to go into a photography course instead. Photography and videography, having both of them under your belt really does help, especially if you know all the camera angles, all about the aperture and the lens settings and all that good information. It really does transfer over well to the video production side of the study. In the end, I just decided to go with the photography class and decided to continue on to the China trip, even without the video production course. TENSIS program, Tennessee Consortium for International Studies, I believe. They work very hard to get each student onto the trip that wants to go. They offer a lot of different scholarships, the 50% off that I took when I entered, and they also help you discover other programs like different grants and different scholarships that people are offering for students to go across seas and experience different cultures. They really do like that more students are starting to study abroad and things like that. TENSIS is, their head is actually here in Pellissippi State Community College. Since you're a Pellissippi State student and they're the head of here, they can offer you a 50% off essentially on your trip over the overall tuition. There was still quite a bit left to go, but it really did help, just taking half of that price off, and it really opened up. The plane ride, I have never been on a plane ride that long. Like I say, the trip going to was worse than coming back because it actually took longer to fly. It took us longer to fly over there than to come back. That 20-hour plane ride was the worst experience I've ever had. And the moment we landed, it was morning, so we were so tired, and they threw us on a bus to get going. Oh God, that was the worst. But it was very interesting. I watched a lot of movies while I was on that plane. It's quite literally 12 hours difference, so it is as far as you could get from our time zone to theirs. I was waking up really early in the morning, ready to go, and at the end of the day, when they're still trying to, when we still had things to do, I was as exhausted as could be. When we first landed, we were in Beijing. And I gotta say, that city, it is the largest city in the world, but it's very stretched out. It's not very dense. There are places of Beijing that have much denser populations, but the city itself is just sprawling, stretched out, miles and miles between buildings. It's actually amazing how it feels like you're not even traveling through one city, you're traveling through the countryside or something like that. Afterwards, when we got to Shanghai, a little bit later, a week on in the trip, exact opposite. It felt small, but man, the population was dense. They even had highways going over other highways. It was overpasses over overpasses, large buildings, thousands of people. You couldn't take a single step without bumping into someone, it felt like. Man, I could tell you all the places we saw there and there. We drove up to the Great Wall of China. The spot that we were at was just on the side of a mountain, and you could see they had the wall itself and all the little forts for where they stationed the guards at, and it was just a hike up to each one of those forts. The steps were quite steep. We went to the Forbidden Kingdom, the old center of Beijing. We went to Tiananmen Square. We went to the Summer Palace. They have a lot of different seasonal buildings for the emperor. He's got a summer palace. We saw the traditional summer palace, the original one they built that is, for all sake, is pretty much in ruins now. We next drove over to Shanghai. A lot of sights to see in Shanghai, especially, have you ever heard of the Bund? A river that goes between two parts of the city. On one side of the city has a lot of old traditional kind of more European style of buildings. I heard that they were occupying the area at the time. And the other side is kind of like the new China, where it's had a lot of modern buildings, a lot more elegant, a lot more larger size. It was just interesting to see how that river kind of cut the two in half, and that's why it's a large tourist attraction. Also went to Hangzhou and Suzhou, two of their not so known cities, but very interesting to see, and a lot of modern things to see as well, like the tailor's market, where I actually got this jacket made for myself. It's the only thing I actually brought back from China. All the different restaurants we stopped at. I gotta say, out of everything about China, I definitely missed the food. Their meals are a bit different, and we kind of like here in the West, we kind of prefer more of the warm meal, cold drink, but they kind of have a little bit of an opposite mentality with the warm drink and cold meal, the warm tea and other kinds of drinks like that, and the nice subtle foods. One of the things they like to practice, and one of the principles, is what they call feng shui, a form of balance. And this accounted to almost everything they did. The balance of their home, the balance of their lifestyle, and especially the balance of their food. Warm drink and cold food, where they try to balance it out in their stomachs to make them they believed it to be a much more healthier lifestyle. I did feel like afterwards I was eating a lot healthier, a lot more balanced. It was just one of the things you had to adjust to. After a while, you did just get used to eating Chinese food. It was just so good. The culture of China is much different from ours. Well, it varies in a couple of places. They emphasize more on the family group, compared to the United States, where it's more of the individual. For instance, kind of how they like to live out their lifestyle is the parents will take care of the children and the grandparents. Those people that are in that working age, those guys are really what support the entire family and everyone. For instance, even when you're eating at a restaurant, you don't order your own individual dish. The group picks out several dishes that they like, and they'd set it on a rotating table, which they'd spin around, and you pick off from that dish the food you want to eat. We'll order a plate of green beans, we'll order a plate of tofu, a plate of beef, a plate of pork. And as the table's spinning around, you stop it, you pick off a little bits at a time, and you fill up your own plate, then you eat from there. Just a much more intimate feel between each person, a much more understanding, and so much of a much more understanding trust. It's a very interesting lifestyle to see. But I have to say, I much prefer the Western views of me not taking care of my parents not taking care of me at a certain time. Kind of that splitting apart into our own individuality. They don't like to say no. That's actually one of the big things. In their language, they do not have a word for yes and a word for no. They have don't, the negative connotation, but they don't actually have a word definitively for no. They don't even like to say that outright. They don't like to be very direct. And it's a certain politeness in their language, and they try to teach us the best way they can of all the little things like this is kind of impolite to do in public, this is the don't exchange money in public, it's not seen as very kind thing. Whenever someone hands you a business card, they'll hand you with two hands, accept it with two hands, and take a moment to actually read over it, don't just stuff it in your pocket. It gives you such a culture shock at first, but you just learn so much of how an Eastern viewpoint on how to look at life. Very much so opens up your own views about things, how to perceive things, how to take people, how to take what they say, and everything like that. The classes themselves were quite interesting in the fact that they tried to tie in the classes and the trip together to improve the overall experience of the learning. Photography, it wasn't just a theory on how to take, it wasn't just sitting down talking about theory on composition and all that good stuff. We actually went out, we took the pictures, we saw all the sights, we came back, we discussed what we shot and how to fix some things in post and how to improve the overall shot. And then we went out and did it again. The architectural class, as they were going around the different parts of China and all these interesting buildings, that's actually their class, explaining who designed the building, how it was done, how it what it's supposed to represent, how it's supposed to improve the overall feel of the area. Just mixing the classroom experience with the openness of going out to all those places on this big open new world, it just really helps, it helps you experience it more. It adds a lot more experience than just sitting in a classroom. You really just get your feet wet of all the information and all the actual seeing of the locations. In almost every situation, a person will learn a lot better from experience than what they'll pick up in a textbook or trying to memorize for a test or anything like that. Since that we were in another land, in a place we're not familiar with, our minds just opened up to all possibilities. And since our minds were so open and we were taking all this information, it's like a shock to your learning system. It's like a shock to how you learn. You just take in so much more information and it just sticks in your mind of all the things you've learned and see. We all had to stick together, and we all, a lot of the classes, we split apart for our different classroom times throughout the day, but all the trips and things like that, we all had to get together. So we just naturally, everyone started learning each other's names at first. It built a family dynamic of we work together, we are going to explore this country as a group. It was actually sad seeing when we landed back in Nashville, seeing everyone going and saying our goodbyes for that summer. We spent a summer together essentially in a brand new world. There's a lot of things I could say I can learn from the trip. A lot about, I could say I did take a lot from the photography class. I learned a lot about, a little bit more about composition than I did, and I also learned a fair deal amount about post of Photoshop, about taking your images and just tweaking them and improving them, making them a slight bit better for your portfolio. But past that, I learned a lot about the culture. I learned a lot about the people that live there and a lot of their views. And through their views, I've learned to open up mine a little bit more. I've never been one much to travel myself before the trip, and I say I'm a little bit, haven't really experienced too many things past the normal school and day-to-day life. So just having that experience really opens up your eyes onto, it really opens your eyes into who you are yourself. And I could tell you, I learned a lot about myself and how I see things based on seeing this contrasting view of how they see it. And I've learned to take that information and kind of add it into my own of how do I perceive things, how do I look at things at a different angle. The more experience you have, the better. It's take more views on life and gain more knowledge from it. To encourage students to go on this trip, I don't have enough time and enough things I could say. The experience will stay with you your entire life. You have to experience it for yourself just to know how it feels. And I can recommend this to anyone who's interested, anyone who has the opportunity, anyone who's ready to study abroad. It's one of the greatest things I think I've done in my college career. My name's been James Jarnigan. This is everything I'd like to talk about in my Chinese trip. I would recommend this to any student, to anyone who's ever interested. Just look for local programs like Tensis or any other equivalent to it. If you're a student and you want to do this, take the opportunity, take the time, do a bit of research, and learn about everything you can do and everything you can experience overseas. I found out about Tensis through one of the representatives from China Now, the program that Tensis works with. He came to one of our engineering classes. It just didn't seem to have the classes I wanted. They were all core classes. They had the video production courses, which I was greatly interested in, and I never knew that they actually had that program until one of their representative, Mr. D.K. Wu, came and gave a nice speech about it during class. It was very enlightening, very informative too. I decided to go just because the opportunity came. I'd never thought I'd ever do something like travel across the country for school. I wanted to enroll to the VPT class and gave a speech about the Tensis program, the China Now program, and what generally you can learn from China itself. Before that, I'd heard about it through the pamphlets and everything, but it didn't really seem like anything I'd get into. It didn't have Hello, my name is James Jarnigan, and I'm here to talk about my trip and experience that I've taken to China.